Hi, my name is Dan Keane. I'm a composer, producer, and musician based in London. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I hope you're all doing well. In this video, I want to show you my new favorite library from Spitfire Audio, which is Spitfire Appassionata strings. And I can understand what some people are going to say already. Even though I'm a composer for Spitfire Audio, they don't ask me to make videos like this. I'm not being paid by them to make this video directly. But just in case you didn't know, because I'm a composer for them, I am slightly biased. I like the company and I like this library. So this isn't a review. This is just showing how I use the library in the context that I do. And actually, I'm going to be breaking down a piece that I wrote as a demo called Reunited at Last, which we'll play shortly. And then I'll kind of break down how I've written the piece. Now, this library I thought would be a little bit difficult to pitch to composers because while I love legatos, it's not necessarily something that everyone uses all of the time. Spitfire is also known for having string libraries and is known for legatos and is known for recording in the Hall at Air Studios. So again, if this library has all three of those things, what sets this apart? What makes this the next generation of legatos? Well, I believe it's just how detailed they've gone with this. The programming, the cleaning up of all the files, and making 5 dynamic layers, 4 round robins, and creating a dynamic range that I haven't heard in a Spitfire library to date. If you think of the likes of BBC SO, that's only got 3 dynamic layers, so there's just more detail in there. But it's also down to the way that the transitions were recorded and the way that they've been programmed. It's such a lyrical library. It creates these beautiful soaring legatos with a lot of ease. And I'm just going to start, first of all, again, this isn't a review, but I'm just going to play a little kind of section just so you can hear how the library feels. So you can see it's got this beautiful emotive quality right out of the box. Now this dynamic smoothing is currently set to agile. If I set it to relaxed, it's a little bit more gentle. In the microphone positions, we've got quite a few different mixes. We've got 4 mixes this time. Mix 1 is your typical sounds like a recording. Mix 2 favors the hall a little bit more. Mix 3 and 4 are quite intimate sounding. Then we've got stereo mics, the mids, close ribbons, tree, ambient, and outriggers. When we were asked to compose demos for this library, there were particular names that were being thrown around quite a lot. John Williams, Thomas Newman, Alan Silvestri, these beautiful emotive pieces of film music, and I knew which direction some of the composers were going to go in. So I wanted to create something that was perhaps a little bit kind of alternative in places, but something that I thought would be really, really beautiful. I'm only using legatos, so I'm not using the hairpins or the glancing attacks that you get in this library, because I knew that legatos were the things that people would be focusing on. And this piece, I think, is really quite lovely, but I've expanded out from a piano sketch, and I'm going to show you how I've broken that down into the various parts as well. So I hope you'll enjoy this video. I'm just going to quickly play this down, and then we will go a little bit more in depth. So as you can hear, it's a fairly simple piece. It's quite nice to listen back to, really, because obviously having put in lots of time and effort in creating all these beautiful little lines, to be able to sit back and listen to it being played by an orchestra that sounds so realistic is really nice, and it's quite kind of moving, really. So I started with a little kind of piano sketch, and this was the motif that I was going to carry through for the whole piece. So just based in E major, with that slight kind of A minor 6 sound to it. Now you can already see that I try to think about things as sort of idiomatically as possible. You can see I've got quite a few moving lines, and the way that that translates to the orchestra is literally basically copying. In the next section, I wanted to try and sort of bring it out a little bit, so I wrote this in my piano sketch. So you can see I often work in like little 2-bar chunks, but because I write a whole piano sketch first, I can feel the overarching sense of the kind of narrative of the thing. I wanted this piece to kind of take you on a journey, and in doing so, I've added some low basses which come in here. So this kind of section, it gets duplicated, but I'm also duplicating the melody up an octave as well. There's something almost apologetic about it, the way that the lower notes kind of rise up to match it. That's where we kind of feel a little bit more cemented, I suppose. Now, because I know where I'm going to end up at the end of that bar, I know I'm going to end up in B, I often just improvise little moving lines, and I know that isn't very helpful to anyone who's trying to learn anything, but sometimes it's just fun to experiment. Have a listen to this viola line on its own. It's just a little scale that goes down to a note in the chord, a D sharp, and then the cellos come up to meet it there. I often like to use the cellos high up to sort of make it feel a little bit more vulnerable. So if I just play this section here without the piano. The cello is actually up here, and so the viola is actually below it. So we've got a couple of melodies in this. We've got our first violins doing the main tune at the top. And we've got some impulse legatos here, so when we repeat held notes, it sounds like we've kind of retaken the bow. So that's quite useful. And then we've got our viola counter melody. And I think that's how I started with this. So I had this along with the cellos and the basses. I'm using the hairpin. I am actually using the hairpins and the basses at the bottom. You'll always hear at least 2 lines moving around at some point, and I think that just adds to the slightly meandering feel in this piece. I really like this second violin line though. As you can hear, the mod wheel is fairly low, and normally what happens in legatos is if the mod wheel is really low, it's not very agile, whereas when it gets up to the top, it's a little bit more kind of responsive. It's not really the case in this library. You can do really beautiful, quick moving passages, even when the multi-wheel's slow down. And it just sounds really reactive, which is nice. So I've got this little line here. And in context, that sounds like this. So this is a classic thing here where, the second violin moves and then the violas kind of imitate it. When I'm describing these things, it sounds like I'm analyzing it in a way that's like really profound. It's not that profound at all. It's more like, oh, there's some space here. I'll just quickly add a quick line in. So don't feel that you've got to work in this kind of analytical sense. In another video, I'd like to break down how I would then push this into Dorico to orchestrate this properly, because I've just recently updated to Dorico 4, and there are some really exciting things in there. So do subscribe if you want to see that. So this was taken from my piano sketch again. I just had this really lovely little idea. I just really like that chord. It just has an almost longing sound, longing to be reunited. And so when I come up with these little ideas, you can see I didn't really know what I was going to do from this. And then I thought, oh, something will happen in A, and then this piece is effectively just a collage of random musical ideas, but I quite like them nonetheless. Now, I don't really have any idea of where I am kind of harmonically. I knew that we'd moved, but I didn't know quite where to. So the piece starts in E major, and I thought, oh, cool, I'll just do the same thing here. Then realized that I was actually in F sharp major. So I literally just copied and pasted this over, but then changed some of the, when I do that, that means kind of MIDI drawing, CC1 and things like that. So it's a little bit stronger sounding, but it's basically the same piece. It's just in F sharp major now. And then I thought, oh, sod it, let's just move straight on to the next bit. So I then came up with this idea. I said this on Twitter the other day, but if I had the right conditions, a smooth jazz album could literally fall out of me right now. And I don't know why, but I'm just really liking harmony that moves and shifts. It reminds me of an old piece that I played. I think it was called the Gollywog's Cakewalk or something. So this is actually fairly easy writing because all the parts have already been played fairly idiomatically. So when we mute the piano, I literally just played each line in turn. There's a fairly painful process of and trying to learn that part on its own. It's easy enough with the bass and easy enough with the melody, but learning those middle harmonies can be a little bit difficult sometimes. But when I did eventually commit to it, this is what that sounded like. And miraculously, we're back in E major. So I kind of thought we need to get back to the main tune, because even though I've done all this lovely stuff with the mod wheel low down, I want people to hear how big the dynamic range is. So I thought I'd maybe just do this little piece again, but make it absolutely massive. So this is probably the least neat version of the sketch, because I just got a bit excited and started improvising as if I was Rachmaninoff. I love finding cool chords. So just to go over the harmony quickly there, we've got F sharp minor 7 with a flat 5. And then we've got A flat major, but with a B7 underneath. And then that repeats. But then it resolves down to a B7 chord. So the B7 leads to the E major, where we started the piece, in fact. So have a listen to how that sounds in the context of the strings. Now, I find it really difficult to create moving passages of chords that sound busy but aren't all getting in the way of each other. I don't just want to be arpeggiating, but I want it to feel like it's moving. And so with held chords on a piano, it's fairly easy because the notes decay. But how do you do that in string writing when the notes won't decay unless you tell them to? The best way I found to do this is really just to kind of have these moving parts on their own. So if you listen, this is the first violin. I'd say this would be the weakest point of the composition if the violas weren't there. I don't know if this is just because I've heard the piece so many times I know exactly where it's going, but I don't think that would be obvious if you were hearing this for the first time. So I decided to add a line that wasn't moving and doing crazy things, and it's this viola line doing this. So when you listen to it all together, okay, so we're into this next section now. You can see I'm adding a couple of parts. We're going to have 2 violin 1 parts. We're going to have 2 violin 2s just for a little bit. The cello's actually got its own melody as well, and it's this main tune. So the violin 2 is doing this as well, as is violin 1. So this is all in octaves. So if I just mute that for a second so you can hear everything else that's going on, this is the kind of the engine underneath. Cool. So as you can hear, it's a bit of a mess, and if I bring this into Dorico next time, you'll be able to hear what I might do differently to reorchestrate that in a slightly cleaner way. Effectively, I just needed lots of movement, and I'm a big fan of slightly older scores where they arpeggiate the hell out of these cello parts. Because I'm working in Logic, I don't tend to orchestrate before I play. So a lot of the time I'm just finding, a note that I might like and just... I'm just kind of experimenting most of the time. And I just knew that I wanted little lines to move around, hopefully not getting in the way too much of each other. But these viola and cello lines are a little bit conflicting, I think, in retrospect. But that's okay. And sometimes a little bit of dissonance is actually quite nice. So now when we bring this melody back in, one of my favorite chords at the moment is this kind of G major with a D flat major chord in the bottom. And it leads to F sharp minor. The way this works is every line has its own movement. So the G is going to F sharp minor. And naturally, if I go from D flat to F sharp minor, that's just chord 5 to 1. So it works in that way, and it sounds a little bit jazzy and a little bit cool, but you know what, I don't mind that too much. So in the harmony here, we're going from F sharp to D major, and then B major, E major with a G sharp in the bass, and then F sharp minor, A minor 6, E major, our favorite, G major over D flat major. And then I did something really naughty here. This should be a rated R. Oh, that's my favorite turnaround at the moment. So we've got F sharp minor, 7. Oh, isn't that nice? So this is A minor with a major 7 and a 6, F sharp. And I had this, and then I brought the F sharp down to an F. So that becomes F7, and then E major with a B in the bass. Who'd have thought? And then kind of little turnaround. And then I thought, so okay, let's just see how that fits into the orchestra. Now, it's not quite as satisfying in the strings as it was in the piano, and I think it's for a couple of reasons. First of all, I'm sure I haven't quite done the voices right there, and again, I can do that in the Dorico video, but I think one other thing is I should have held on to that A minor 6 chord for a little bit longer, rather than just landing on it. Like, people don't have a chance to realize where they are before we've already taken them onto the E major chord. And then I did a nice little section here. And again, just being absolutely saucy. So the melody here follows the melody of what we had in the earlier section. But I've now moved it slightly to be a little bit more playful. We've already been reunited, and now we're just laughing about how long it's been since we saw each other because of lockdown. So we're going C sharp minor, G sharp minor, A major, and then the C sharp becomes a D flat in an E flat 7 chord. Again, I should probably have slowed that down a bit so the listener can be like, okay, oh, okay. A couple of things here. It helps to neutralize all of these extra voices we've got, because naturally we needed them to have that really nice kind of scrunchy chord. But then when it moves into this slightly more traditional sound, everything just feels a little bit more balanced again. Now, a couple of things here. I've done a little melody line that just follows the main theme. But in a context that we've never really heard it before. And you can see I've done it at the end here as well, just another little cello line. So as you can hear, it's a pretty fun piece, and I had a lot of fun writing it. I'm sure you can see that. So just going over a couple of mixing choices, I have everything sent to a bus, and then there's some processing on this bus. Wanted to pull out some of these high frequencies, 3K and 5K. They just, especially when you've got as many tracks as I did here, it can just get a little bit harsh sometimes. And then I use this plugin here just another EQ basically, just to kind of soften a few sections. And then I put it through a tape machine, again, just pulling out a little bit of that harshness. That was mainly introduced by tape saturation. And then I do something a little bit naughty, but I pull out the center a little bit, so it just stereo widens it a little bit. It pushes the high frequencies up to the sides and the low frequencies more towards the center. This is just something that I always apply, and I just quite like the way it sounds. And then I use a kind of live room preset, which I referenced to in the last video I made about reverb. And I just use this to soften it a little bit. You can see that I've got quite a few plugins here on my output as well. Mainly this is just kind of a little bit of mastering just to make it sound a little bit kind of warmer. I'm using FabFilter Pro R with the Concert Hall Vienna setting on the output as well, just to add a little bit more. So basically, because I'm sending to 2 reverbs already, this just helps to kind of glue the reverbs against the reels, if you will, the natural dry sound. And then a little bit of limiting, which I've disabled in this case because the latency would get a little bit annoying. Speaking of latency, I'm running this system on my new MacBook Pro, and I am in the process of writing a script at the moment for my full review. This is currently recording through a 4K screen. I'm running Pro Tools Ultimate in the background, recording the audio from this microphone. I'm not using the screen on the MacBook, but I am just using this 4K monitor, and it's recording through ScreenFlow 9 with, it's more than 4K. I think it might be 5K it's recording at, so that I can crop in a little bit better. And I'm running this with all of these tracks at a buffer size of 256. So you do the maths. As you can probably hear, there's no fan noise at all. It's been absolutely amazing as a computer. And if you're interested in my review for the M1 Max MacBook Pro, do subscribe down below as well. Thanks so much for watching. Subscribe if you haven't done already, and click like if you enjoyed this video. I'll see you again very, very soon. Goodbye.